Hello, everyone. Happy May. Going through the first week of May. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm back on the couch. So let's get right into it. Today I'm going to review a book I've been wanting to read for a while. It's called Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. Hope I said his name right. And I'm actually matching the book. I did not plan that. I just haven't worn the shirt in a while, and I was like, I'll wear it again. But now I'm matching. That's cool. So, it is a gothic horror novel. It's a vampire book about lesbian vampires, which is cool. I just want to apologize if you hear power tools in the back. Because, of course, I get one thing quiet and then something else is loud. So, and like I said, it's by Sheridan Le Fanu. And he was born Joseph Thomas Sheridan Le Fanu, August 28th, 1814. And he passed away February 7th, 1873. I'm just going to give a very brief autobiography about him. He was an Irish writer of Gothic tales, mystery novels, and horror fiction. He was a leading ghost story writer of his time, central to the development of the genre in the Victorian era. So another writer, I'm assuming, M.R. James, described Le Fanu as absolutely in the first rank as a writer of ghost stories. Three of his best-known works are Locked In Room Mystery Uncle Silas, the lesbian vampire novella Carmilla, and the historical novel The House by the Churchyard. So that's a little bit about him. And this was released between 1871 and 1872. There's no exact date that they gave. So yeah, so I'm gonna give a synopsis. First, it was published in a magazine, but then it became its own thing. It is narrated by a young woman preyed upon by a female vampire named Carmilla, later revealed to be Mircalla, Countess Kernstein. So it's like an anagram of, Mircalla. The character is a prototype example of the lesbian vampire expressing romantic desires toward the protagonist. The novel notably never acknowledges homosexuality as an antagonist trait, leaving it subtle and morally ambiguous. So there we go. So the main character, her name is Laura. She is 27 years old at the time that she narrates the story. The story happened when she was 19. She's kind, beautiful, and lonely. Her mother died in her infancy. And she was raised by two governesses, Madame Perrodon and Madame Moselle de La Fontaine. So, she lives in a large, lonely house with only her father and governesses. She has a close relationship with her father, frequently taking walks with him, describing him as the kindest person. When Carmilla comes to stay with them, Laura is trusting of her, and they become fast friends, despite Carmilla's sometimes strange behavior. She's instantly attracted to Carmilla and expects no ill of her, even as she becomes more and more clear that Carmilla has been preying on her. So yeah, that's the main character, Laura. And then Laura's father, he doesn't have a name. She just calls him father. I mean, because it's from her perspective, So yeah, he's taking care of her since her mother died. He's an Englishman who was in the Austrian service, retired with a pension, and settled in old federal estate of Styria. I cannot speak today, y'all. It's spelled Styria. That's where they settled at. He's a good-hearted man who willingly offers to let Carmilla stay at their estate when she appears sick after a carriage crash. He's also a practical man who does not initially think his daughter's illness could be due to supernatural causes. There are other characters called the General and the Baron. They also help him, with Carmilla, the issue with her. I'm not going to say what happens because I don't want to spoil it. And then after everything happens, he takes her to Italy so that, she can be away from, all the trauma that happened to her. So Carmilla, the main attraction, is a vampire of marvelous beauty. She is gentle and kind. Her soft voice moves easily and elegantly. She does have strange tendencies and becomes agitated when she has a funeral procession because I think they're singing like Christian hymns and vampires, the whole crosses and all that. That wasn't a theme in the book, but I'm guessing that's probably like connection. So she gets agitated by that. She doesn't get up until like 1 in the afternoon, so they knows that. They know nothing about her. She won't tell them anything about her. She appears to develop an obsession with Laura while staying at her home, acting very attentive and possessive of Laura. I told you technically her name is Mercala, and that's an anagram of that name. She had a lover, and her early death plunged him into inconsolable grief. So he moved her grave from where it originally was, and then she got hunted by a demon who turned her into a vampire after death, which they don't really explain how that's possible. But I'm guessing, hey, it's fiction. It's horror fiction, Suspend your disbelief. Her victims are only young ladies. She visits them at night in the form of a huge black cat and leaves 2 fang marks in their chest. So, she ain't new to this, she true to this, because there are a lot of, when you read the book, it seems like there's a lot of victims. So Madame Perrodon and Madame Elise de la Fontaine, they are Laura's governesses who raised her and educated her in the absence of her late mother. They speak different languages between them, and in Laura's narration, she insinuates that they have little control over her since she was so spoiled by her kind father. So yeah, they're just really cool. General Spilsdorf, that's what we're gonna call him. So he was supposed to visit Laura with his niece Bertha, but the niece got seriously ill and passed away. He grieves her because he had left her like a daughter. He didn't have any kids. And he tells the story about Carmilla's true identity, which they don't realize at first until he sees her. So then he says that he actually took Mira. Did they spell her name differently in this one? I feel like they did. Hold up. Okay, Mercala, that's her name. Yeah, they have a typo here. I got it from some site, y'all. I forgot which one. But Mercala lived with them for 3 weeks, and that was during her stay that Bertha fell ill and died. So he feels like it's Bertha's fault, basically. And he's convinced that she's a vampire. And then he hears about her relationship with Laura, and he becomes convinced that Carmilla and Mercala are the same person. Well, now I gotta check if that's the name they actually have in the book. Okay, they do not have it as Mercala. See, it's Millarca. So this side ain't got it right, y'all. I need to edit that. Okay, so then Bertha is his niece. I won't go into too much about her, but basically, she was very smitten with her as well, and they became good friends. And obviously, she was, prey for Millarca or Carmilla in the book. So I'm gonna go through my pros and my cons about the book. So my first pro is I love the narration by Laura. I think it was greatly written, like the narrative of her story. She described everything in vivid and great details. I love how she was telling her story and what her feelings were as things were happening to her. And I also, she's so funny. I love how like oblivious she was, because I felt like she was really sheltered and naive. Because Carmilla, like, I marked some pages in the book where she's like explicitly telling Laura, I really love you and all these things. And Laura is just like, what are you even talking about? And it's just like really funny to me. And there's like times where she's like, one passage in on page 46, it's like she's in an embrace with her, And you know, she's telling her all of these things, like how much she loves her. And Laura is like, well, why is this woman talking like this? And it's just so funny to me. Okay, let's go to page 48 and I'll read a little bit of what I'm talking about. So Carmilla says, just like whispering her and like kissing her on her cheek, she says, "You are mine. You shall be mine. You and I are one forever." Then she had thrown herself back into her chair with her small hands over her eyes, leaving her trembling. And then Laura said, "Are we related?" I used to ask. "What can you mean by all this? I remind you, perhaps, of someone whom you love. But you must not. I hate it. I don't know. I don't know myself when you look so and talk so." So basically, she's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Do you love somebody else? What is going on?" But I just love that. So I put some things like where she's explicitly telling her, like, "I love you," and Laura's just not having it or just not understanding it. It's just so funny. And my second pro is the descriptions. Fanu did a great job at describing the descriptions of every single detail of the story, from how every character looked to how every place looked to how every event took place. I felt like I was at the scene of everything. I felt like I was in the room. I was at the old church. I was at wherever they were at. I was there too. That's how it felt. So it was good. It was really captivating, and it made me heavily invested in the story because of all the descriptions of everything. So like you can imagine everything in your head and everything that's happening. And my third pro are the characters. Every character is unique. You got a great sense of their personalities and their mannerisms. And every character was complex and not one note. I guess some, maybe like the woodsman, because he's like a woodsman. But even one character they had was like, he was like a hunchback. I don't know what you would call that now, because, you know, that's not really something you would call somebody. But, you know, I would assume he has scoliosis. And the way they described him and all the things he had that he was selling and how he approached Carmilla, like it was really like you were really in there. And it made the story more memorable to have all these unique people come together, especially in Laura and Carmilla's personalities, because you can see that Carmilla is very passionate, but Laura is often both enamored with Carmilla and repulsed by her. So that was good that you could like, she was like expressing that, you know. And they also express each other very openly about how they feel about one another, which, like I said, Carmilla repeatedly, like at least 3 times. It's like, "I really love you. I'm in love with you." And Laura's like, "What is she talking about?" But yeah. And then my last pro is the vampire history. So they have like a vampire expert that they talk about on the Legend of Vampires, and they explain it in like great detail. And I love that it is referenced as like an actual professional person, and not just, you know, they use like someone who actually has in the book. I don't know if they're a real person. They publish, you know, things about vampires and stuff. So like I like that. And it's not just like a hearsay kind of thing around the town. It's like, this is how we're actually gonna fix our problem, you know. And I only have one con. My one con is I kind of wanted to lean more into the romance. I know, technically, Carmilla was just feeding on people, trying to survive. So it wasn't really, so I don't know if she was really technically in love with anyone. But I kind of do wish it had leaned more into it. I know it wouldn't have made sense to this story, but maybe in some adaptations they lean more into it. I feel like that would be interesting. My favorite chapter was chapter 5, the likeness. So they find a portrait, like I guess they had some old portraits, and Laura sees one that looks like Carmilla, but it's like the name is Millarca, which is Carmilla, and it looks just like her, of course. And she wants it in her room, and I feel like that was very cute. And then once again, Carmilla at that same chapter is like expressing her love, and Laura's just like, "What is she carrying on about again?" LOL. So I really like that. That was my favorite chapter. I didn't have a least favorite chapter. I thought, you know, as the story progressed, I feel like everything progressed like in a good way. So I don't really have like a least favorite chapter for this book. So I'm going to give my overall opinion. I really love this novella. I think besides some old English words, it was very easy to read. And even if with the old English words, you could kind of guess, like with the way the sentences, like what she's saying in the sentence, you kind of guess what she means by it. Or you can just look them up, which, you know, everybody has a phone. Just Google right there, you know. Um, so yeah, it wasn't a hard read for me. I love descriptions of everything and everyone, and I love how Laura narrates the story, the characters, and how like the story flows in general. So it goes from like Laura's like childhood a little bit, and tells about an incident that happened that connects her and Carmilla, and it progresses all the way to like the climax and the resolution. So I feel like it progressed really well. Um, it was a very quick read. It's like 100 online. It says 108 pages, but my version is 156 pages, and I read it in 3 days. So you could probably read it in less days if you just read it straight if you wanted. Which I feel like I would read this at night, so then I would get tired. But like if you just want to go ahead and knock this out, I just feel like you could do it in like maybe like a 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe not even. Yeah, because I feel like it's pretty captivating. So you would, if you just went straight through it, I would understand. So yeah, I would recommend it. It's quick. It's exciting to read. I highly recommend Carmilla. I gave it a 9 out of 10 only because even though I know it wouldn't make sense to Carmilla's motives, I would have loved to have like Carmilla and Laura actually fall in love. Even though I know that's not really the point, but you know. So I decided to do a little prose poem, not a prose poem. I mean a prose paragraph, because I'm trying to do something different. I don't know if it like is necessarily considered a poem, but it's called Carmilla's Declaration to Laura. So this is my me interpreting Carmilla like expressing herself, her love to Laura. You and I could be together forever, even after death. We could be so in love it hurts us both. We can be as one here and forevermore into the afterlife. My dear Laura, your companionship brings me the greatest joy I've ever known. Please come and be with me, and only me, until we take our last breaths together. And even then, cradle me in our shared grave, so we will never be alone again. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to do, because I've been doing poems all month, last month. I was like, let me try something different. So, yeah, I highly recommend Carmilla. A quick read. This was published 26 years before Dracula, and people say that, it's very influential for Dracula, which makes sense, I actually have Dracula, but Dracula is a lot longer than this book. So, I was going to think about comparing them, but that's a long read. So maybe I'll start reading Dracula, and eventually I'll talk about Dracula in this one. Since I have the notes, I can just go for my notes or reread this one real quick. So yeah, that is my thoughts on Carmilla. I wanted to do it during Women's History Month, but it's written by a man, even though it's about two women. But I was like, And then I thought about Poetry Month, and I was like, I can write poems based off of the book, and I was like, So now it's finally the time. May, since I'm not dedicating May to anything, did it. So I decided to finally read it. So yeah, if you've read Carmilla, let me know what you think about it. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you prefer Dracula? What are your thoughts on it? So let me know what your thoughts are, and I will see you all next week.